I just want to say that on behalf of MCC US and MC USA, I want to welcome everyone to the fourth and final webinar in this series entitled Beyond Incarceration, a hard look at dismantling the prison system and building healthy communities. My name is Lorraine Stutzman-Amstutz. I'm the denominational minister for Mennonite Church USA. This series has featured amazing practitioners and theologians who have shared their knowledge, their experience, their expertise, their passion on this issue. And tonight will be no different as we focus on what addressing the issues of mass incarceration looks like in practice, along with the challenges and hopes as we move forward. Chi-Chi will be introducing our speakers, and before we go there, I would like to highlight a couple things for our time together. For those of you joining us for the first time, please note that our previous webinar recordings have been posted online on the website where you registered. If you're interested in that, they're available to view at your convenience. Tonight's webinar will also be placed on that site. It's being recorded and will be posted in a couple of days. We'll hear from our guest speakers for the next hour, followed by about 30 minutes for questions from the audience. So please feel free to post your questions anytime throughout the evening using the Q&A feature, which is next to the chat feature on the bottom of your screen. If you're struggling to find the feature, just reach out. We're available to assist with posting them as well. So if you need to put something in the chat, that's okay. I also want to note that in addition to the webinar series, we're launching a number of pipeline to prison learning tour opportunities led by MCC and MC USA, and that these learning tours are offering a chance for more in-depth, hands-on learning about the complexities of the U.S. criminal legal system, and will be held throughout this coming year in different places around the country. So these learning tours will also be listed on the website where you registered, so please feel free to check those out. Reach out to any of us you see on the screen with any questions. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you especially to our panelists for being here with us tonight. And Chi-Chi, I'll turn it over to you for introductions.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's good to be here. Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Chi-Chi Ogekwe, and I'm the Philadelphia Program Coordinator here at MCC East Coast. And I have the pleasure of working with churches and amazing practitioners, such as the ones I'm about to introduce to you guys, in serving men and women in prison and building healthy communities in the Philly and Greater Philadelphia area. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our facilitator and guest speakers for the evening. And I will start with Keisha Acton. Keisha Acton is a Black queer femme organizer who, since living in Arizona, has been directly impacted by racism and the carceral systems that exist in Phoenix. These experiences have shaped Keisha's analysis and have become the driving force behind the work they do as a social justice organizers, direct action activists, and abolitionist. Keisha is the co-director and lead organizer for Black Lives Matter in the Phoenix metro area, BLMPM, and has been organizing with BLMPM since July of 2020. They have led the BLM, the Black Lives Matter's security, and have been an integral part of building out the strategy and security infrastructure with the We Keep Us Safe initiative, along with TEMP's Alternative to Police pilot project. Welcome, Keisha. Our second panelist is Marquetta Atkins-Woods. She's the founder and executive director of Destination Innovation Incorporated, is a community educator who brings her passion for working with youth and her creative energy to the table as a facilitator. For years, she has dedicated herself to ensuring that young people are equipped with the tools for a better future. Her awards include Nonprofit Award of Distinction, Heartland Black Chamber. Best in Innovation by the Wichita Business Journal. Ron Walters Leadership Award by the Wichita Branch NAACP, and Civic Engagement Award from the Wichita Urban Professionals. Shift Pilot. Thrift from Community Voice, and Women Who Lead in Diversity and Inclusion from the Wichita Business Journal. She was born and raised in Wichita, Kansas, and graduated with a degree in communications from Wichita State University. Her persistence in reaching her educational goals equipped her to be a mentor for high school youth in Wichita, including her own children, Devin and Amani. She's married to Daryl. Thank you, Marquetta. Welcome. Our third panelist is Reverend Dr. Lowe, Dr. Lori Banfield, also known as Dr. Lowe. And she's a native and resident of Philadelphia with multidisciplinary expertise in psychology, social justice, and practical theology. She serves as a higher learner educator, clinician, researcher, clergy person, and all-around social justice advocate. Dr. Lowe has dedicated her life to fostering spiritual resilience and liberation paths to oppressed and suppressed groups. She is the executive director of the Philly-based nonprofit Redemption Housing and founder of the Spiritual Resilience Council, a training initiative under Lori Banfield Ministries, LLC. She's also the author of the spiritual formation book, Walking Worthy of My Calling, Journey Back to the Likeness of God. I read that one, it was wonderful. Among other articles and publications. A wife and mother of 2 children, Dr. Lowe endeavors to build atmosphere changers and restore sacred space within and beyond church, school, and prison walls. Welcome, Dr. Lowe. Thank you. And last but not the least is our facilitator, Fran Derry. Fran is a native of Philadelphia and resident of Drexel Hill, PA. She has vowed to remain true to Psalm 34, verse 14, no matter the cost, to turn from the evils of racism and oppression and seek to serve and uplift the marginalized and defranchised through the practice of restorative justice. As the restorative justice advocate for MCC, Mennonite Central Committee East Coast, she collaborates with community partners, local churches, and stakeholders to provide supportive services to those impacted by mass incarceration. Her education includes a Bachelor of Science degree from Penn State University, a Master of Divinity from Palmer Seminary, and she is currently a doctoral candidate at the United Lutheran Seminary. In her role as an adjunct professor at Lancaster Bible College, she works diligently to help students recognize the connection between learning and ministry. Fran is a passionate teacher who has served in ministry at the Word Formed Church for 15 years in Drexel Hill, PA, and is a transformational leader and ordained minister with over 3 decades of experience in social services and education. She has 2 daughters and 2 grandsons. What an amazing group of panelists we have on today. So welcome everyone. And now I will hand it over to Fran.
Thank you, Chi-Chi. Thank you so much. Yes, we're definitely amongst a wonderful group of women, wonderful group of leaders. I'm so excited to be facilitating this webinar tonight as Restorative Justice Advocate, MCC Philadelphia. So we're going to jump right in because I wanted to ask our panelists if there's anything they wanted to share that wasn't in the bio or that the bio really didn't highlight, anything that's currently going on in your journey. So we're going to make space for that right now. We'll start with Dr. Lowe.
Wow, man. It's again a pleasure to be in this sacred space with you all. Truly grateful for the invitation, and grateful to learn from these wonderful sisters and wonderful atmosphere changers on tonight. I don't really have much else to add to the bio. Thank you, Chi Chi. I also serve at Word Form Church, so woo woo. And truly grateful to be here tonight and to learn and listen and fellowship with you all concerning this beautiful restoration of dignity for our brothers and sisters who are coming home.
Amen. Amen. Okay, Marquetta, would you like to share?
Sure. I wanted to talk a little bit more about my program.
Mhm.
So Destination Innovation Inc. is a hub of youth leadership development. We are home to 3 programs. So we have Camp Destination Innovation that teaches kids careers outside of traditional norms with an emphasis on entrepreneurship and STEM. We have Progeny, which are youth touched by the juvenile justice system that we're teaching advocacy, how to change policy in a way it impacts them. Our young people chose the name Progeny because they wanted adults to know we are what you created. So you have to take responsibility for that. And then we have Root the Power. Root the Power is our civic engagement group. We're teaching kids in layman's terms who does what and how they impact your community. They're getting young people excited and energized around voting and letting kids know you might not have the power of your vote just yet, but you do have the power of your voice to be a catalyst to change. And the reason why we chose these 3 things is because those are the things that impact our communities the hardest. Not having a proper investment in how to build wealth in our communities, not being civically engaged and understanding who are making the decision that impact our communities. And when kids don't feel like they belong to a community, when they don't feel like they belong to a city, they look for places to belong, or when they can't find, like in our community, we don't have a grocery store in our community. And so when you can't have accessibility to healthy food, it does something to our kids. And that's how they get caught up in the juvenile justice system. And when parents don't understand those policies, they sign their kids' life away. And so we want at DI for our kids to understand how these systems work, how to infiltrate them, how to dismantle them, and build them back into something that's sustainable and healthy for their future. And we always say we have too many conversations about the future without the future at the table, and we get it wrong. So we're bringing the future to the table. Thank you. I'm happy to be in this space with y'all.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I like that we're bringing the future to the table. I agree. I agree. Yes. And Keisha, please tell us some more interesting things that are going on there in Phoenix. We were having a conversation before we really logged on, and Keisha was bringing out and highlighting how the pandemic in its own way was sort of like a blessing. It was definitely tragic, in itself, but there were some things that happened that arose in the pandemic regarding social justice that really brought things to light that needed to be brought to the light and to the table, as you say. Marquetta, and one thing also I thought about, Keisha, when you had said that, was climate justice. Because the pandemic shut down buses and trains and ships, there was such a beautiful thing that happened in nature and regarding those our atmospheric system and things of that nature. So yes, Keisha, speak more to what you do down there with Black Lives Matter and anything we may have missed in the environment.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here with y'all already, just feeling all the feels and the goosebumps from the shares. So I appreciate y'all. So my name is Keisha. The work that I do here, one of the things I want to touch on is, Marquetta, you hit it really well. So we, something that's not in my bio is we're working on our Alternatives to Police program, is a youth pre-court diversion program, which is what we're working on. And in order for us to bring that to the forefront, we have also identified that in order to do so, we would need to have the youth at the table helping us build the policy before the policy is enacted, because otherwise then we're recreating a system that's already in place and that is already harmful to our youth. So we are hosting focus groups for our youth and our community to get their ideas and their understandings of how to hold them. Hold on, baby. Okay, one second. I'm sorry. Of how to hold them, how to create this program in such a way that empowers the youth to use their voices and empowers the youth to change their decision making. And also this program is going to be rooted in restorative justice as well as transformative justice. So it will be aimed at also meeting the needs of the families, because like you said, Marquetta, oftentimes youth are put in these situations because their material needs are not being met at home. So if we can create a program that helps to meet the material needs of the families, the youth can now focus on their healing and their growth rather than trying to worry about whether or not they have food to eat that night when they get home, or they're being teased at school because their shoes are messed up, right? So that's kind of one of the major projects that I'm focusing on here in Phoenix. However, we are in a very, very conservative red state. It's a very pro incarceration place to live. So we are definitely up against that narrative, but we have some great partners, we have some great resources. And yeah, I'm excited about the future to talk more about that in the next section.
Great, great, great. Thank you, thank you, thank you all. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna get into our questions. You all have our questions, but feel free to add if anything comes up you want to discuss or talk about. I'm so glad we have like 48 participants here who are with us, engaging in this conversation. So this is going to be great. It's going to be rich. So I don't have a particular order. I just see you guys a certain way on my screen. So if you feel led to answer the question any particular order, that's okay. And our first question is, how did you first arrive at mass incarceration work? And you did talk a little bit about that. And what were the practical steps that led to getting involved with your organization? Were there some practical steps that helped you find where you are currently at now? And did you have any encounters that definitely where you definitely said, this is the work I want to do. This is the work that called me. Anyone?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in. Jump into the double Dutch rope.
Cool.
Challenge.
Mhm,
So, but yeah, thank you, Fran, for that question. You know, I'm one who truly does love origin stories, and I think origin stories are so purposeful and so meaningful, especially in a work like this and in a service like ours. You know, where we're really just caveats of justice and of reconciliation that at times can become weighty and wearisome. It's important for us to kind of reignite our journey and our call by looking at the origin again. And so for me, when it comes to this work or my awareness, more so of my call to kind of activate and be a part of this work was back when I was in seminary. Now, I mean, I grew up in Southwest Philly. So the experience and the reality of incarceration was always evident for many around me, and within my own family, and within our church systems and spaces in our community. So the awareness was always there, but the sensibility of call to work in this vineyard, if you will, or in this area, really did not come to pass for me until I was about in my seminary journey. I was serving at a local emergency shelter for men. I was serving as a chaplain of discipleship and life skills training for one of their programs there that were specifically for returning male citizens. And while in that program, is where I started kind of having that prick in my heart with regards to this intersection between chronic homelessness and incarceration. And in particular as well, not only with regards to that, but in particular as well, with the lack of the church's empathy and presence within that process. That was something that really vexed me in that moment. When I would have these conversations with my dear brothers there in that community, their heart and desire to be reintegrated into their community in place and in space with persons and places, they had such a strong desire to do that and the wherewithal to do that, but unfortunately they were so closed off by the gatekeepers, if you will, within the community, and with those that had been so richly enrooted and entrenched in the community, many of which within our neighborhood were churches, were faith communities. And so that was something that really pricked at my heart with regards to what was really the barrier between what was this disconnect that was happening, between what was being identified and expressed as values, but not being practiced, right? Or as we call kind of sacred neighboring now, what was that? What was that was in the way of that? And so that's what really started my journey with regards to research and my continuance in walking with my brothers. And that's what also connected me to a friend of mine that was serving in that same community as a program director. He had informed me of his vision for Redemption Housing, which is a faith-based reentry organization, a nonprofit in West Philadelphia that I now executively direct, and was on the founding board for. Because of his invitation, he said to me, "Lo, I want to start in West Philly." It's like, I want to start in West Philly, a transitional housing space for returning citizens that were specifically targeted towards returning male citizens, as there was and still is a housing vacancy in this community. And what we have seen within the process of reintegration is that one of the major components of decreasing recidivism is stable and secure housing and healthy social capital. And so that's where we seek to meet the need. We're not trying to do everything, but that's where we seek to focus and meet the need. And then from there as well, the Spiritual Resilience Council and the psychoeducational training that I developed came out of that work, those encounters with my dear brothers in that space.
Okay, amen, amen. Thank you, Dr. Lord. Yes, that is powerful. I love hearing that part of your journey and how things it's almost like it sounds like you just fell forward. You fell into your ministry. There was
Yeah,
things
definitely experience great. Yeah, for sure.
yes, things were going around you, and I love that your heart was pricked and you just acted. You acted and the empathy drew you. So that is awesome and that is a blessing. And it's a good thing there's good work going on. I'm sure all over the city of Philadelphia, but West Philadelphia definitely in itself is being built up and definitely
Amen.
becoming aware
Word.
of the issues in mass incarceration. Awesome, awesome. Keisha, I repeat the question if you need me to. How did you first arrive at mass incarceration and what was the practical steps that led to getting involved with your organization?
Yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, I feel like I have a very non-traditional entry into this work. I have experienced so I've been on the side of the incarcerated. I was arrested first when I was 11, and kind of cycled through the system ever since, or not ever since, but for many, many years after that. And I finally reached a point where, and so incarceration was all around me. And I just remember there being multiple times when I was trying to gain re-entry into society and rebuild my life from the things that have happened, and continuously hitting a wall and continuously being pushed back and told, oh nope, sorry, you have the credentials, but because you did this thing, right, you're not good enough to work here, or you're not good enough to live here, or right? Whatever the narrative is that was coming back at me as I tried to gain re-entry into society, I took it as almost like a challenge of like, let me figure out how to do this so that I can then share that information with my brothers and sisters who are also facing these issues, right? My immediate family, my brothers are all both currently in prison, and I'm raising have adopted both of their children and am raising their children because they are being faced with those similar issues, right? Of like recidivism, and also just the ability to actually get back into society. It's easier to reoffend than it is to actually rebuild your life. And so for me, it was important to figure out, okay, how do I break through this, right? How do I re-enter myself into society? And then once I figured that out, how do I now give this back, give this information back, create spaces, make spaces for people who didn't have the privilege that I have of getting out of the system in the ways that I did, right? And so for me, that's kind of where it started for me. And then in 2020, when the pandemic happened and the uprising happened, let me back up a bit. So prior to that, one of the ways in which I began to use that knowledge that I have to help my community was I began life coaching and doing wellness training, because, you know, we all know that the Black community is one of the highest rates of diseases and poor health in the country. And so one of the ways that I was giving back was to create spaces where people felt good in their bodies, felt healthy in their minds, healthy in their bodies. And that was, I predominantly serviced the Black and Brown community in that space, which led me to, when the uprising happened, I just felt like I could not sit back and watch on the sidelines in that particular situation. It was a time for action. And so I definitely took action, found myself here with Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro, and have made this my political home, because we as an organization focus directly on dismantling the prison industrial complex, and focus on supporting cases of police brutality, and really trying to end mass incarceration as an organization. And so one of the ways in which we are doing that is through the program that I was talking about earlier. So that was kind of my entry in. It was a little bit bumpy and jumpy, and I became, you know, I was a directly impacted individual, and I just really want to share that experience from the perspective of creating opportunities for people to overcome their challenges.
Thank you, Keisha. That is awesome. That is really awesome, because once you found out how to navigate those systems, and after you found your voice, you could have went on your merry way and lived your life. But I'm thankful that you went back, that you reached back, you know, to help bring our other folks along who were suffering those same injustices. So that is an awesome thing. Now, just a follow-up question. I'm just curious, when you were able to navigate and come through, did you have a mentor? Because we were also talking about mentoring and bringing the young people to the table. So were you able to link up with someone who helped you?
You know, I've had quite a few mentors throughout my life. I don't think I've ever had a very specific mentor of, hey, I'm going to teach you how to navigate the incarceration system or post-carceral system, right? Once you've made your way out. But I've had many beautiful mentors who just taught me that I was more than the mistakes I had made in my life, that I was not defined by the things I have done, and that just because those things have happened to me and that I have done these things, that my life was still worth something, and really just took me in and loved on me and cared about me and showed me how to gain my voice, showed me how to advocate for myself and advocate for others. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say I've had one mentor, but I've had many mentors that have really helped me find my voice and find my way.
Awesome, awesome. That is a blessing. Awesome. Thank you for sharing and doing that work. Yes, yes. Marquetta, how about you? How'd you first arrive at mass incarceration? How'd you get involved with your organization? Seems like you formed your organization. You
Yes,
created
ma'am.
a process.
Yes, ma'am. So I've always been involved in community work since I was younger. I used to be actively involved in the NAACP when I was a kid. And then, life happens and you go to work and you start the grind, and I wasn't fulfilled. And I wanted to, community was calling me. And so I got re-engaged in volunteering and started working for an organization called the Seed House. And at the Seed House, we got a contract with Kansas Appleseed to mentor about 4 or 5 kids that had just came out of the system. And even when we were talking about it, I'm like, they need more. And so what ended up happening is we're going to stop the program. And I'm like, no, you can't make promises. And I want to say first, we love the Seed House. We're in partnership with the Seed House, still work with the Seed House and have Mike on our board. But we can't make promises to kids and then snatch it away. And so I asked them, could I take it on? Progeny was born in the Seed House, and we worked with these young people to teach them advocacy, leadership, how to change policy and the way it impacted them. And for me, when it comes to this work across all the programs that we have at PI, is no matter where a young person comes from, I want them to know, and this is my life mantra, and Keisha, when you were talking, it made me think about my life mantra, and what I tell our kids are, our stories are our sword and not our crutches. We're not going in there wanting people to feel sorry for you. We're not going in there looking for people for saviors. We're not going to give credit to the pain that you went through. We'll never give credit to the pain. Nobody deserves that. No child deserves that. But we will give credit to how you came out of it. And so we teach our kids when they're going into these spaces, you wield your story like a sword, not like a crutch. And I wanted these young people, progeny, and like I said, progeny means our kids named themselves progeny because they wanted adults to know we are what you created. I firmly believe our youth are the best investment that we can make that yields the best returns. And when we are addressing issues when it comes to our young people, especially in the juvenile justice system, too often we address the wound without tending to the infection. And the infection is the system. We want to talk about a kid that makes a mistake, but we don't want to talk about the system that's not feeding them. We don't want to talk about the school to prison pipelines that exist. We don't want to talk about the, victim to prison pipelines that exist. We don't want to talk about, mental health to prison pipelines that exist. We don't want to talk about, the systems that are crippling our communities and harming our kids, but we do want to put a Band-Aid on it by putting our kids in jail. And so I'm passionate about there needs to be a culture shift and how we are working with our young people and how we're dealing with mass incarceration. And we know this, I'll be preaching to the choir when I say this in this space, but we know that jails were created as an answer to slavery. And when you know that jails, this system was created as an answer to slavery, then you understand fully why it's mostly our kids that are incarcerated. It's by design. And so we're handing off a tradition over and over each generation of trauma that our kids never should have had to start off with. And so I'll have a lot of cheesy sayings, y'all, so excuse me, but I always say in order to cultivate good fruit, you got to start with the roots. And so that's the reason why I started to work with kids. Because if we want to change tomorrow, and if we think about anything that ever happened in the world, civil rights movement, Tiananmen Square, the movement with the kids, when they shut up the school, young people have been a catalyst to some of the greatest changes that ever happened in the world. And so I always tell young people, you don't have to wait till you grow up. You can start doing these things now. You don't have to wait till you or adult to have an invitation to the table. You can sit at those tables now. And I believe in arming young people with the tools that they need to be successful leaders. Now, we don't say we create leaders. We don't do that. Life creates leaders. But what we do is we give them the platform to shine. We give them the tools to be educated about the things they need to be educated on. And we teach them how systems work so they learn how to navigate these systems so they can dismantle it and change them. We are working in a way with Progeny, and I'm really proud of these young people because my goal and my objective is to pave the way and get out the way. So I want to create DI as a space where young people can come and we build them up to be the leaders that they need to be, and they take on these roles, and that eventually they're going to be running this program. They're going to be the leaders of this organization. We're going to hand off the baton to this next generation because unfortunately, we were not able to solve the issues before their time. And so instead of, we give our kids trauma as soon as especially Black and brown kids, we give them trauma before they walk out the door. At 4 years old, we're telling them they have to be 10 times better. They have to be 10 times smarter. They have to act away. And they're a baby. They're a baby. And we're putting all this survival mode on our kids at an early age. And I long for a space where our kids can just be free, to be able to make mistakes, to be able to learn from what they go through without the thought of going to jail being over their head, just because they are criminalized, just because of the color of their skin. And so that is my origin story. I'm passionate about young people. I'm passionate about giving them a better world. And I'm passionate about them being a catalyst and having power seats at the table to create the world that they want to be a part of.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is awesome. Awesome, Marquetta. Now, I've been writing a dissertation for the last 9 years. Where have you been on this? I just finished it. Everything you said, every highlight, everything is so true, speaks to our young people. They need a seat at the table, and we can pour into them so they do become the change agents that they need to be. You just gave a great, wonderful synopsis of my dissertation. Thank you so much. And it's so needed. We have to get it at the root, just like you said. We have to get our children. And I love what you said about, where we're putting all this pressure on them. You have to do this, you have to perform. And it's interesting because either we're pressuring them or we're killing their dreams. I've seen the other side. Kids want to come up, I want to be president. No, you don't want to be president, be a bus driver. No, I want I want to study medicine. And for some reason, because our lights, or in the past, our lights have been dampened. We've come under this trauma, and so we're like, no, you can't do it. Instead of doing the opposite, like you're saying, pushing our kids, motivating our kids. I'm definitely with that 100%.
That's why we named it Destination Innovation. I wanted our young people to know, no matter where they came from, no matter what their hard story was, that where the destination where you can go is wherever it's going to take you, wherever you want to go. And that's why I say our stories are our sports and not our crutches, because I have kids that have been incarcerated since they were 14 years old that are on my staff now. I have kids that were in foster care system and were a foster care to prison pipeline. They won a $50,000 grant to do a documentary on the foster care to prison pipelines that exist, that we just wrapped up a couple of months ago. I want these young people to see a world outside of the one that they typically know, burst that bubble to show that you can be anything that you want to be. And so giving these young people extraordinary experiences and that pipeline to say where you come from is not where you got to end up at.
Absolutely. I agree. Awesome. Awesome. Yes. I feel like, okay, we're not in church, so I'm going to just keep it. But I feel a praise. Y'all get me. Okay. Our next question. Tell us how your organization's work is addressing the issues of mass incarceration. And of course, each of you have touched on this, but if there's anything specific that your organization is doing, addressing the issue of mass incarceration, please speak to that. Anything you want to highlight that's really essentially happening now with the organization?
I'll go really quick. With Progeny, we have a bunch of things that we're working on. So we have our Invest on Arrest Kansas. campaign that we're working on around
Say that
restorative.
again. Invest on.
Invest, don't arrest, Kansas.
Invest, don't
Uh,
arrest. Awesome.
Invest, don't arrest. So invest, be proactive and invest in our youth. Use restorative justice practices instead of automatically going carceral with our kids. And so our kids wrote a synopsis called From Harm to Healing, and pretty much gave our policymakers a blueprint on these are the things that kids need in order to feel safe, sustained, and healthy in their communities. And what we did is we spent a year just going around speaking to different kids at different schools, and we asked them, what would you do with the $140,000? And at that time, that's how much it cost per year to incarcerate a kid in Kansas. And so we asked them, if you had that money, what would you do to improve your community? And so we took all the answers that the kids made and we turned it into that Harm to Healing report. You're always asking, what do kids need? What do they need? Well, they're telling you, this is what we need. Another thing that we have is we're a part of Debt-Free Justice, both on a national level and a state level. And we want to erase fines and fees for kids. When I listened to Keisha talking about being arrested at 11 years old, and they automatically take those fines and they place it on families that are in poverty. A kid cannot pay those bills. And what happens when the parents can't pay it, as soon as that child turns 18 years old, they take those fines and fees and restitution and they put it on those kids' shoulders. So you're not even giving these kids a chance to be successful. You're already garnishing their check. You're already making them pay the fines and fees in advance. So they're in this constant cycle of not being able to pay. And if they can't pay, guess what? They go to jail. Or they get put on ankle monitors that they can't afford to pay. And so we have this system that is not creating space for these kids to, recover. And that's when that recidivism kicked in. We're not even creating a holistic environment for people that come out of jail to survive, especially when they're 18 years old getting fresh out of jail. We want them to have a job. We want them to have a house. We want them to be able to pay all this stuff back. Well, if they have a felony, they can't get a job that pays good money. If they have a felony, they have a hard time finding housing. And if you're like in a state that I'm in, Kansas, we don't have a good transportation system here. If they have a suspended license and we're a city where you have to have a car, how are they going to get to work? How are they going to get these things? So we're not even creating a system that's beneficial to help them be successful. So again, it goes back to, we want to address the wound without attending to the infection. And we're not taking care of the system that needs to be corrected in order for our young people and people that are dealing with mass incarceration to come out and be successful in our country in general. We're just not doing it. And I think it's really sickening that we profit off of the trauma of our babies.
Yes, thank you for that. And we do, and I agree. And 140,000, thank you for that statistic. That's unbelievable. But now we understand why you have these private folks investing in these prisons. It's clear now. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to answer next? Tell us how your organization, your work is addressing issues of mass incarceration.
I can go next. However, I feel like, Marquetta, you just dropped the mic. We don't even need the rest of this webinar. You just dropped the mic for us.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I can go. So BLM Phoenix, Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro. So we are an abolitionist organization. And what that means to us is that we're 75% build up, 25% tear down, right? Because the systems, as we've already heard, y'all eloquently say already, these systems are operating by design. They're built this way. They are not broken, they are built this way. And so we are doing the work of trying to dismantle the systems of oppression that exist. And one of the ways that we're doing that is, so we have two wings of our organization. It's called the tear down side and the build up side. And so on the build up side, we're doing things like Black Folks Rock. We have an organization or a group that we work with. It's called Black Folks Rock, where we bring in youth to expose them to nature and dismantle the predominant culture that currently exists, which is white culture, in those spaces, and teach Black and Brown kids to get in nature, to connect with nature, to experience things in nature that otherwise they would not have access to, and historically have not had access to. In addition to working with group home for girls who have been incarcerated and or in the foster care system, working with them on the build up side. That's not my work, so I can't speak to it as clearly as some of my comrades could. But on the tear down side, that's the work that I do. That's the work where we are working to directly dismantle mass incarceration through our pre-court program, which started off as a people's budget campaign where we were engaging with the city of Tempe to reduce the budget, defund the police in Tempe, and reallocate that fund to social services in the city of Tempe. So we worked on that campaign. We spent the first 1.5 to 2 years surveying the community and understanding. When I say the community, so typically the city likes to say, "Oh yeah, we've put out a survey," and that survey goes to house people who have an address, right? People who can receive mail or email, have access to email and other I'm forgetting my language, but other services. And so what we did is we hit the ground and we made sure to survey houseless community and those who are less fortunate and who may not have been receiving mail from the city of Tempe. No, sir, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir. So sorry. He got into my diffuser. And that campaign morphed into an Alternatives to Police campaign, because we realized that in order for us to make any sort of change, we needed to have an alternative to police, because police is not the answer. They harm our communities in more ways than one, and they create the pathways, the prison, I'm sorry, he put something in his mouth. Come back to me. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Dr. Lowe, yes, no worries, Keisha.
Yeah, we
yes.
got you, sis. No worries at all. Listen, if it wasn't for my husband, my kids are currently sequestered upstairs. So I feel her for sure in that process, and practice presence with the little man for sure. But yeah, I'll jump in, and then once our sister Keisha comes back in, I'll toss the mic right back to her. Because I love hearing the work that's being done and the form of service here for sure, and the ways in which you all are navigating, life, right, and still doing life in the midst of all of this. So right now, with regards to some of the ways in which my organizations are really addressing the issues of mass incarceration. So it's interesting here. We kind of say there's a threefold process that's going on when it comes to this area. We have people who are postured towards before the wall. So when Marquetta was talking about, the pipelines and things of that sort, right? These things that are especially affecting and the trauma that our children are inheriting, and things of that nature, right? So this is the operation of pre-incarceration, right? Before the walls. How can we, dismantle, stop, pause, negate that which would bring our those into the system, into this carceral system? Then we look at behind the walls, right? the actual incarceration system, those who are going behind the walls and doing the service of tending and creating sacred space and care, creating pathways for our brothers and sisters and our family members that are currently behind the walls to remain in contact, to remain connected, to keep community, to remain nurtured and have what they need behind the walls to receive education and things of that sort while they are behind the walls. And then we look at beyond the walls, right? And this is the reentry and reintegration process. So redemption housing focuses primarily on the reintegration and reentry side of things. At Redemption Housing, we're a faith-based nonprofit, as I stated earlier, in the Philadelphia, West Philly and Greater Philadelphia area, particularly providing housing and social capital and community support networks to returning male citizens in our area. So our major focus is through the provision of safe, stable, and secure transitional housing for returning citizens in the West Philadelphia area. And with that, the connection to various community supports. And so that's a major initiative of Redemption Housing. And we're so grateful because within this last year in September, we purchased and opened up our second site. And we are truly, truly grateful for that and have volunteers that have been truly amazing in helping to make this house a home and helping us to navigate what that looks like for our brothers to be welcomed home. And so that's beautiful. And we are actively, kind of working with caseworkers and getting on, home plans and things of that sort, because that particular program is servicing those coming directly out of incarceration to us. Whereas our other program, our Next Level Housing program, works with individuals and serves individuals who have been released from incarceration for at least a year, maybe up to 5 years or so, and are struggling within this cycle of chronic homelessness and are still in need of that supportive system and transitional space to be able to fully experience the restoration of their dignity and their independence and that experience of agency. And so that's what we're doing there within the process of reentry and reintegration. Now with the Spiritual Resilience Council, is doing as a psychoeducational training. It's an advocacy training. So it trains individuals who desire to walk with those who are coming out of incarceration. So SRC works beyond the walls, but it also works in a capacity from a research side, looking at what's happening behind the walls and even at times before. So right now, part of the research that we are really, really focused in within SRC and myself, I'm a clinician by trade, a psychologist by trade. And so part of the work that we are in is looking at how disenfranchised grief impacts and has been an influence within the process of recidivism, within the process of the influence and the temptation of and just the trap that is criminalization and the carceral system. So I've been looking at that for many years now, since prior to the pandemic, and just, continuing in that research has been, just really beautiful to see the things that have been coming up, and something that is really overlooked and trivialized in that process. So as Sister Marquetta was talking about, the speaking to the wound instead of the infection, right? That part of the infection is the trivialization of disenfranchised grief, that we really see that disconnects or creates a decrease in social capital. It creates a decrease in our attachment bonds. It creates an increase in our shame and in the stigma that we feel. And all of that has a connection to our maladaptive coping strategies that we might employ and that have already been criminalized by others, right? Our street life resilience strategies that have been criminalized by the systems that we live in. That really does have a working and an impact with regards to how we find ourselves in these situations and scenarios, and that's impacting all ages, for sure. All abilities and capacities, for sure. And it's had a major impact on the destabilization of our communities and the development of our communities. That's a key work right there within the SRC, as well as within my personal research commitments. Sister Keisha, I want to welcome you back into the mic here, for sure.
Hi, I'm so sorry. He
you're good. No
decided to
apologies.
drink some essential oils that didn't go down so well for him. So,
Oh.
but we are good. All is
Now we
good.
know.
I apologize.
Joy is of parenthood.
Yeah,
Right.
this is real life happening over here.
Real life.
But yeah, I'll sum it up. I'll keep it quick. So essentially, that process of the People's Budget campaign led us to an alternatives police program. That led us here to realizing that what we really need in this city is a pre-court youth diversion program that is centered in interrupting the school to prison pipeline through, right? So essentially how it works is, right, if there's an arrest, then that arrest immediately comes over to us as a program, and we are working to build an MOU that would write into the MOU and eliminate prosecutorial discretion, as well as eliminate the reporting responsibility. So once they come to our program, there's no way in which that they can find a path back to the incarceral system once they've entered our program. Now, if they reoffend, that's a different story, right? But for this particular issue, and sorry, I said offend, and we're working on not using that language, but if they get in trouble again, right? So that's the program that we're working on. And one of the things that we are trying to push the envelope on here in our city is increasing what is considered youth. So rather than most places say that you become an adult at age 18, well, we know that our frontal lobes are not fully developed until age 25. And that the people who are getting in trouble with the law the most are those individuals between 16 and 25, right? And in some cities, like the ages are lowered. So we're trying to have the age of youth considered 8 to 25, so that we can address those young adults who are struggling to find housing, like you mentioned, Marquetta, struggling to find a job, especially if they've already been incarcerated before. And here in the state of Arizona, we don't have an expungement law. We don't have a sealed records law. So if you get in trouble as a youth, that follows you through your adulthood, and it does not get sealed, and you don't have the option to expunge your record. You can set it aside, but it's still visible. It's still there, right? I've gone through that process myself. And while it does not hinder me for most things, it is still very much visible. And that's the case for many youth here in Arizona. So that's kind of the program that we're working on. We're working on centering that program in a community consortium of such, where the program is led by youth. It is there are youth mentors included. It is led by youth, and the programs that we are the organizations that we're partnering with are organizations that agree to the community agreements of restorative justice, centered in transformative justice. Because while restorative justice is a beautiful thing, and it focuses on restoring relationships, particularly, if that's with a family member or a friend where, something was damaged, but we are not interested in restoring relationships with the state. We're interested in transforming those relationships and making sure that the system itself is interrupted. So we're not working with probation officers in that way. We're not collecting fees. Our program is going to be is not going to be a fee-based program. It's going to be a program that youth can participate in without a cost to them or their families. And we will work on also, like I mentioned earlier, meeting the needs of the family who, in case their material needs are not met with it, so that they can then focus on their healing and progress through this program. So we partner with groups like West Coast Transformative Justice. We're partnering with School of Hip Hop, which centers on teaching youth entrepreneurialism and here, baby, take it over there. Go get it. Focuses on teaching youth entrepreneurism, money management, as well as the roots of hip hop, because we understand that in the Black community, our roots in hip hop go deep. And if you understand hip hop and you can use music as a means and a tool to express your pain, express your grief in such a way that you can also monetize it, right? We're not capitalists. We try not to be capitalist individuals, but you need money to live, right? And so that's kind of that program in a nutshell. And I guess I'll stop there.
So I can add really quick, because you touched on a lot of stuff that we do. And I wanted to give you some tips that we do too. So we do have a program called Word to Life. It's a mental health program based in hip hop and spoken word. And we're working with kids in middle school to teach them how to use hip hop as an outlet to express themselves. Conflict resolution, bullying, any issues that's facing them, we have a cipher circle, and the kids can come with their bars and talk about the issues, the topic that we want to talk about that day. So teaching them a way to handle their anger and their pain in a way that's more constructive and contained. So we have a program like that too, called Word to Life. Another thing that we do within the confines of all of our programs is so often we create nonprofits, and this is no hate to nonprofits. We need them, they're necessary to take care of our kids on the inside. But what ends up happening is we send them back to the same poverty and struggle. And so with DI and with Progeny and all of our programs, our kids get stipends, our youth leaders get paid stipends. And so we can't change your living situation right now, but we're not going to send you home broke. And so they get monthly stipends. We feel like they need to be invested in. And too often in these movements, especially these social justice movements, we have these young people at the forefront, but they be the least paid in these movements. And so we're trying to make it create a space where these young people are invested in. The first thing that I ask when people want to work with our young people is, what is your investment in our young people? So not only do we pay a stipend, when people come in, we have them create a stipend for them so they make money outside of us too, because we want them to know that you are worth being invested in. And our kids don't know their value at that age, especially when they're transitioning out of the system. And so we're trying to teach these kids to know their value from an early age and be comfortable telling people that you have to invest in me. One of the things we don't do is photo ops. We're not a photo op organization. So if you're coming in to take a picture with our poor kids, that's not happening. Again, what is your investment in our youth? And if you don't have any valuable investment, you can come and speak to them, but you cannot take a picture and post it on your social media. That kind of thing, because we want them to have control over their own autonomy. I think it's super important too that when you're creating these youth leadership development type of organizations, again, that we're creating space for these young people to stand in their leadership. So what we do is we're a youth adult partnership. So we're not a youth-led organization. We're not an adult-led organization. We're a youth-led partnership. So it's bridging the gap of us working together to move this abolitionist, this restorative justice, this transformation, like you said, of how these systems work through our young people, and them being armed with the knowledge to know how these systems work.
Awesome. Yes. So important. Very important work. I love that. Yes, it has to be transformative. And like so many things are going through my mind while you guys are talking. I'm like, so many points and so many things that you've talked about. The Abolition Law Center here in Philly that I work with as in my work with MCC today just won a judgment against the city of Philadelphia, $9 million plus, because some of the police during the 2020 pandemic just went sent the bombs, the chemicals, those things they send. Militaristic was the term they used. Just just totally disrupted this peaceful protest that was going on. So there's the accountability. That is very important. And so now you'll think twice. Hopefully you'll think twice. But things like that that are going on here in the city, and with the young people, how you guys spoke to, yes, we're not going to let you monetize them. They're going to monetize their own gift. Yes, and get what they deserve. And it's good that we teach them that. I think that's so important. And Dr. Lowe, to your point about the disenfranchised grief, if you can just say a little bit more about that, because I have a family member who is um, um, beyond the walls, or behind the walls, you say. And I don't think, I think what I was going through in supporting my family member, I was experiencing disenfranchised grief, but I didn't have a name for it. It's a lonely place when you're putting the money on the books, or you don't have other folk. My awareness of what was going on and the connection that I had, but like where other family members were just like, oh, it's okay, oh, they'll be all right. They're getting fed in there. Can I tell you what they're getting fed in there? Like, no, it's not. I don't know where this. I guess this is the thing. These three hots in a cot, but it's no country club behind these walls here. People think, it's really okay, and it's not. So I think I was going through that and didn't have a name for it. So can you just talk more about how that, even with family members, how that disenfranchised grief lands on folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And Fran, thank you so much for your transparency there, and sharing part of your experience with us. Because yeah, that's truth. It's so true. So when I say disenfranchised grief, so let me take a step back here. There's a few terms when we talk about the experience of loss. Or death and loss, or the process of death and the process of loss. And that could be objective loss or subjective loss, right? And so some of the terms we use is bereavement. That's the recognition of a loss, right? Again, an objective loss. So that's a thing, that's a place, that anything that we're attached to. And then it can also be subjective. That's personal. That's person to person experience of a loss. So my awareness of a loss, my experience, my straight up awareness of a loss is bereavement. Right. Now, grief has to do with my emotional response to that perceived and felt loss, right? An emotional response to a perceived, right? So I think I lost something, right? It can be happening in my mind, right? Like, even if it's so there's also this understanding of anticipatory grief, right? I am anticipating loss of a thing before it even happens. And that then can influence how I behave. That can then influence how I approach whatever the situation is. And so any form of grief has to do with my emotional response to whatever I have perceived or felt concerning a loss, an actual loss that has occurred, or an imagined experience of an attachment loss. Mourning is then how we then culturally display that loss, or our experience of the loss, to the world, right? So those are kind of those three major things there. Now, the distinctions between grief, as I've already identified, general grief is just an emotional response to loss. Anticipatory grief would be my emotional response to a loss that has not yet occurred. Disenfranchised grief is my emotional response to a loss that my community does not acknowledge, right? So if as communal people, right, our emotional responses are communicators. Our emotions are meant to communicate and help us to engage with the world, to draw individuals in, and to help us to engage with what's happening outside of us as well, right? And so whenever we are communicating emotionally, that is meant to help signify that to the community of how they should respond to me and how I am responding to what's happening. But if no one is acknowledging what I am communicating, right, then I am then muted, right? I am then shunned, and I even might feel shamed by the emotions that I might be expressing, or the loss that I have perceived or am feeling. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to incarceration, what we have seen is that it carries the same weight of bereavement and grief that an actual death occurs, having occurred in a person's life, regardless of the stint of incarceration, or how many times an individual has experienced incarceration. For that individual and for their beloved ones, right, their beloved community, there is an experience of a death-like bereavement that takes place. And so for a lot of individuals, though, because there is shame attached to it, there is an expression of a lack of space that is given for individuals to grieve the loss that they have incurred. And so that's where the disenfranchisement comes in. What we see with individuals across cases that experience disenfranchisement, that it has a higher prevalence of experiences of depressive mood and depressive states. It has a higher linkage to maladaptive coping strategies. We see individuals do spend more time in isolation or withdrawing from their community because their community is not responding to what they're communicating anyway. They're telling them man up, or they're telling them, it's all right, he's over there, he'll be back, or he belongs there, or she belongs there, or she should have never done it. And they're shaming us in the process. And so we're told to stifle the experience of the grief as opposed to integrating it and being empowered by it, to advocate for the reconciliation that our grief is really enticing. And so that's what we tend to see occurring within the perspective of disenfranchised grief that can then result in some increases or increasers rather within the criminal and the carceral system.
Thank you. Got it. And so true. And I love that how you said we have to help them integrate that grief.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, there's definitely a loss. It's a loss. It's a loss. The community suffers, the family suffers.
Absolutely. On multiple
And
levels.
yes, yes, Doc. Thank you so much. Yeah. So so the work you're doing is definitely needed. Everything that you sisters are working on and just talking about is it's so powerful. It's so powerful and so enlightening. And I'm just so thankful and grateful to you all for definitely having your organization. That was the question, how your organization is addressing the work. Now, and I love that the forum that we are navigating tonight is the practice piece. So it's like we practice. I hear you guys practicing what you're preaching. You're putting it into practice. So that is just awesome. And that is just truly a blessing. Okay, as my timekeeper, okay, I'm going to keep going. I don't see a timekeeper. They told me I had to stop after an hour, but I have another question. What do you see as the greatest challenges in interrupting the current system of incarceration?
I'm gonna come out really quick and just say the policymakers. Right now, we are in a space where we're regressing. As a society, we're regressing. And we all know that policy change and doing this work is a marathon, it's not a race. And it's a marathon that is exhausting, with sometimes very little wins. And so trying to navigate a space where you keep your energy up, where you keep the youth that you serve's energy up, or the people that you're working with energy up, when you have all these obstacles that are constantly being thrown in your way. Because the only way that we can really create systemic change is through policy change, get it as a law. And so trying to figure out ways to get rid of the people that don't need to be in these seats anymore, which is why we're trying to make young people understand that these people in a position of power are in that position of power because we put them there. We can also fire them from these positions. And so having a battle against that mindset that I always tell the kids, the internet was the greatest thing that was ever invented. Google was too. But it was a blessing and a curse, because all the information you receive, you have to filter and have, critical thinking skills to decipher where this information you're getting is coming from. And everything that you read is not the truth. And so countering the madness that the Illuminati is stopping you from voting, or that your vote don't count. And expressing to them that your vote on a local level means more than any national vote that you can do. So the real change starts in your city, and having them understand that. Our kids do, our Root the Power kids do candidates forums where they moderate it, they put it together, and they question the candidates. And we wanted them to do this so they can see the type of people that are running for these offices and realize some of these people are just average Joes that have the ego and the audacity to think that they can win. You know, and a lot of these people don't belong in these seats, or they just have money back in them. And so the young people seeing that light bulb go off to say, what? You know, it's so important that I'm just not going Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. I want to know who these people are. I want to know what their stances are. I want to be a critical, engaged voter. And so these young people are power mapping and learning who does what and who's on my side and who can I lean into to be a catalyst or an advocate for change with me, and who is not my ally. And they're learning this at a very, very young age. And so they're savvy when they go out there now. And not only that, it's getting them in the position to have jobs and money in their pocket. Is one of the things I'm really, really, especially our kids touched by the juvenile justice system. Too often we put them in this cycle of getting these mediocre jobs. And so one of the things I want to do is, you know, create a talent pipeline that secures these kids into nice paying jobs so they can sustain themselves. And another thing that I'm working on is I'm doing an entrepreneurship academy for young people that have come out of the system 18 to 30 years old, where I partner with a entrepreneurship organization that's going to give them seed money to start their own businesses, should they go through the academy. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to address the barrier that exists in workforce development. And just because you go through an entrepreneurship academy doesn't mean that you might start your own business, but it does mean that you can have a side hustle, and figure out a way to have multiple streams of income coming in, and you remove the barrier of you having a felony that stops you from getting a job. And so entrepreneurship is freedom. And so just want to give them another way to be able to bring resources in and learn how to invest in yourself and allocate money for yourself. So coming up with different ways that we can get the system from getting a hold around these young people's necks. And it is, you know, we don't want to be capitalist, but money is financial freedom, saves a lot. And so teaching them how to invest in themselves and all those kind of things, so we can start cutting these cords, because all they do is they cycle our young people back into the system because they can't afford to get out of it. That's it. I remember we did, and I'm gonna wrap it up, I'm sorry. We were doing debt-free justice work, and we had little kids were in this conversation. And there was a little girl, she was about 8 or 9 years old, and she was listening intently. And then she turns around, she looks at us and she goes, wait, you mean to tell me if you're rich, you don't go to jail, but if you're poor and you can't afford to pay for an attorney or pay off a fine, you go to jail? That's exactly it. This is exactly what happens. And she was appalled. Now, if an 8-year-old can rationalize that, why come people in public offices can't? So.
That is amazing. And that is a good question. Why can't they?
Yeah.
Like you said, it is, yes. Thank God. Yes, please jump right in there.
No, I'm gonna keep it brief here. I'm just gonna name 5 things here. And Marquetta touched on the first one, policy. The second one there is complacency. We have this kind of pendulum swing in our society of, you know, kind of intensity and like our sister said, kind of drawing back, you know, and regression. We think we hit, you know, kind of momentum, but at the same time, we're seeing a lot of you know, the pendulum swinging the other direction, and a lot of the majority of individuals are just complacent with the things the way that they are. So that's number 2 is complacency. Number 3 is the double-sided coin of stigma and shame. Number 4 would be the mentality of lack, or the mentality of scarcity that is proliferated by capitalism. And then 5thly, the trivialization of disenfranchised grief.
Yes, yes. Amen. Well said. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Yes, yes. Keisha?
Yeah, you guys pretty much hit it. I don't know if there's anything left after that, but I will just add, I guess I'll take it a little bit further and add, capitalism and corporate governance, because while policy is important and right, and the policy makers, we're seeing this wave of tough on crime bills happening right now, and the banning of CRT and all of this wild stuff that's happening out there. But oftentimes it's rooted in capitalism, and that's why there is the privatization of prisons, which is why there is a market for incarcerated people. And so if we can remove the privatization of policing, of prisons, and remove the militarization of policing, by defunding and reinvesting in the police and reinvesting in our communities, for social services and services that we know and have been proven to actually support individuals in not getting involved in the carceral system, and increasing our access to education, and increasing our access to all things, to mental health services and whatnot. So I guess I would just add, the corporate governance as a challenge to interrupting the system, as well as the militarization of police.
Yes, agreed. Absolutely, absolutely. Very good questions in the Q&A. And great, but just that question was the challenges to interrupting the system. But I really want to know, we're going to leave on a high note. Where do you guys see the greatest hope in your community as you do this work? Just tell me really quick where the hope is, where the joy is, where you're finding peace, the shalom of God, where it's really, really working. And we're going to jump into those questions.
Oh no, go ahead, Sister Keisha. No.
Go ahead.
No, I'll just say, for me, kind of the hope and the blessed assurance for me, what keeps kind of my feet to the fire is the understanding that I operate in this reconciliation, or the understanding that reconciliation is already complete in Jesus. And so I'm operating in the experience of now and yet to come. Right. And so that's where the hope is for me. That and knowing that I'm not alone in this work, that there were people and there were places that have been doing this work much longer than I have been, that were here way before me, and they made so many strides and they passed the mantle, and I'm just grateful to try to illuminate it even further for the time that God has gifted me to be here and trusted me to be here, and I hope to pass it along as well to this next generation here, and to share this space and this time. That's a part of the hope that I find daily, and then the hopefulness of seeing what's activated in the community members and their practice of sacred neighboring, what's ignited in students and in the scholars that I teach at Eastern University as they want to lean in to this conversation about privilege, and this conversation about dignity, and this conversation about equity and equality, and what that looks like, as they desire to lean in into what that looks like, what justice really looks like out of the heart of God, and in activity in their lives holistically. And so and then lastly, I would say as well, the other hope is to see the brothers that I'm walking with, to see our neighbors have this experience of pure dignity restoration, and the opportunity and the space to build new relationships with persons and place. That's something that consistently ignites hope for me.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Dr. Lori. Keisha? Yes.
I can go. Yeah, I think for me, something I'm learning is that hope is a discipline. I think as I mentioned earlier in the beginning, right? Like, I got into this work because I was a directly impacted person initially, and then over the last several years, more intentionally and directly doing this work. And my hope has been challenged by this work, and more particularly in the last 3 years, because of it seems so loom and doom and gloom, you know, when you look at the news and when you see social media, it just seems like there is no hope, but hope is a discipline. And so I find hope in spaces like this where I connect with other beautiful Black people doing beautiful Black things in our Black communities. And just hearing how all over the country and all over, you know, that this type of work is happening. And I've learned so much from y'all today, and would love to connect further. But for me, this is hope. This is me practicing hope by engaging in these types of conversations and learning from each other.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. Hope is a discipline. I love that. Yes. Yes. Marquetta.
For me, it's our kids. Our young people give me hope, and seeing what they navigate, what they've been through, and them still be able to lift their heads up and smile and continue to push forward. And working with the young people that I've been working with, going on 5.5 years with the particular program Progeny, and being able to watch them evolve as leaders, coming from hard places, and once not being able to speak in front of people, but now holding panels just like this. Or a couple of weeks ago, I was in San Antonio with one of the young people I mentor, and I was his guest at the Sir Rose event. And I have never been, I'm so used to bringing them everywhere I go, but this time I was his guest at the Soros event, and I have never been more prouder in my whole entire life. And that inspired me, and it gave me hope, because it showed that we can be a catalyst to change for our young people. And just like Keisha said, being in a space like this, doing this work in Kansas can be really lonely. Doing this work, this nonprofit work, and you know, Black women have been in the forefront of these movements for a long time. It can be exhausting, because we live a double life doing this work. When I say double life, we're hit 2 times. We're hit as being a Black woman, being Black woman, being Black queer, being Black with a disability, whatever it is, we carry that, and then we do the work. And so we're experiencing all this stuff in our real life and experiencing it at work too. So it's almost like it's no escape. So being in spaces like this, where, like you said, with other women that are out here doing this work, makes you feel a little less lonely in this work, and knowing that you have allies out there that's grinding just like you are. So we're not in this by ourselves. We're doing this collective work together. And as long as we keep on pushing each other forward, if one is feeling tired, we lift each other up, and carry each other until we get to the finish line. That's what gives me hope. So the kids and being in spaces like this. Yep.
Awesome. Wonderful. Yes, yes. You guys have been wonderful. I'm just so excited. Like, my heart is overwhelmed. This is beautiful. I feel the joys and the hopes and everything you guys have talked about, and being in these spaces. And I think it's important to realize, like you said, Marquetta, sometimes we're hit twice. So we have to do self-care. We have to do self-care in these spaces. There's a organization that I this training, Roots of Justice, and they talk about healing from racial trauma and things of that nature, and the disenfranchised brief that Dr. Lori is working on. We need those things. We need those spaces to heal, to talk, to vent, and to pray, to meditate, whatever your practice is. Yes, they're so important. And I am hopeful. I have hope. I'm excited. We're going to do this work. I appreciate you ladies so much for just walking in your calling. Just walking in your calling, just saying yes. Just saying yes. I thank you for your yes on tonight. I'm definitely supposed to look down here at these questions and answers. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I have time. Someone has to tell me. There are some questions here. One says, how do you incorporate a radical Black queer feminist praxis in your organizing against state violence? Was that specifically for our sister Keisha? Yeah, no, I'm trying to figure this out down here. Or Keisha, do you want to speak to that? Or anyone? That question down there. How do you incorporate a radical Black queer feminist praxis in your organizing against state violence?
I think, and I think in any time you're creating space around organizing, that you have to be intersectional, and you have to think about how Blackness and queerness and feminist, sometimes that feminist part doesn't fit in, because sometimes we're left out of those movements. And so creating space or creating our own spaces, to be intentional, because sometimes with even in the confines of our Black race, we leave out LGBTQIA, and they are present and they are here and they are human and these living their human experiences. And so it's important that you're intentional in the way that you do work to be inclusive. You're intentional to make sure that you're creating space for people to feel safe in your space when you're doing this work, and that they have a space at the table, to be heard, and that you're not, again, I say that photo op are not using placemakers, that you're being authentic in the way that you're doing your organizing and how you bring people in that space together. So I'm answering this as this straight woman, but that is the practice that, I mean, humanity is humanity, or whatsoever, and that's how I view it. And that there's space at the table for all of us, because this is all of our fight.
Yes, yes, it is. Okay, thank you, Krista. Did anyone else want to respond?
I can respond briefly. Questions from one of my comrades, actually, so I can respond briefly. So BLM Phoenix Metro as an organization, we are a Black, queer, femme-led organization. Probably 95% of the people on our staff are queer identifying in some way, and femme or femme. So the way that we oftentimes incorporate a radical Black queer feminist praxis is by making space for the voices of Black queer people, Black queer femmes particularly, to lead in areas where otherwise they would not have had opportunities to lead, to give voice to their struggle, to embody them and hold them with care and love, and see them as full and whole human beings. Because whether or not you agree with my lifestyle, I am here and I am Black and I am queer, and I matter too, right? And so making sure that we are giving space and voice to those experiences, which have otherwise been silenced in our movements and in our society, and particularly in our faith-based communities, right? Like it is a challenging existence to be on the, I want to tread lightly here, but to be on the on that like spectrum of Blackness, right? And Blackness is not a monolith, right? I cannot be queer and not Black. I cannot be Black and not queer, right? Like I am who I am and I come as I am. And so to be rejected by oftentimes my own community in the faith-based community, it's a struggle. And so the ways in which we center it in our organization is making sure to give voice to and speak to the ways in which we've been silenced, and we are no longer allowing that to happen in our communities.
Awesome. Yes, yes, yes. Everyone deserves that seat at the table. That's right. Absolutely. I'd kick that door down, Keisha. Just kick it. Yes, I think that's so important. Okay. How do we participate in developing healthy social capital for returned citizens? Anybody with that one? Can you all see the questions too? Or am I the only one? Okay, good. So I'm reading it right. Okay.
So thank you for that question. I'll just share, I know our time is short, and I would say that is a layered question. It's not something that would happen overnight, but I'll just say this: proximity matters. Proximity matters. I believe I heard my sister Marquetta say earlier, we don't want individuals coming in this kind of savior mentality and this kind of, experience of, patronizing, patristic experience. We don't need that. Our people don't need that. Our children don't need that. And you don't need that either. And so what proximity matters and coming in the understanding of this human to human experience and recognizing that the validity, the value, and the true dignity of our brothers and sisters that have experienced this roundabout way in the carceral system. You have also experienced an impact and been influenced by it too. And they have so much to teach us. Our brothers and sisters have so much to teach us with regards to what it looks like. I believe it was Nelson Mandela who talked about, like, if you really want to know the true heart, and I'm paraphrasing, if you really want to know the true heart and the health or how your society is doing, ask its prisons. Ask those who are in its prisons, and so that's a big part. It's coming in humility and in honor and integrity, in walking alongside, walking with those who have experienced the carceral system directly and indirectly, and being willing to say, I don't know, teach me. Being willing to offer more than just you to take out the trash. You get what I'm saying there? So yeah, and being willing to be consistent in what it means to be a neighbor, and more than just I'm coming in and then I'm going out. I'm coming in, I'm going out, but rather the consistency truly matters when it comes to the investment in person and place, growing and developing with individuals, and involving individuals in the things you care about and the things that are attached to your heart. Authentically. I think it's really interesting when we see individuals that say, yeah, I want to serve and I want to walk with, I want to be a part of, but then I ask, hey, you told me that, your son is having a basketball game. Can we come to that? And individuals get a little quiet. Right? With regards to, so what's attached to your heart and what's beloved to you. If I am also beloved to you, then why not share that with me? And why not, desire to engage what is beloved to me as well. So those things I think are just a part of that process. Within the SRC advocacy training, we do a really deep dive into, the other layers of that. But those are some of the things I would share just in this moment with regards to cultivating safe and sacred space.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to hit our last question, and then we're going to, I believe Chi comes on to do our thank yous. There is such a wealth of wisdom and vital tools from that has been woven out of each of your organizations and initiatives. Has there been efforts to distill or write down what you've learned and developed to help others to replicate the amazing work you've created? Awesome question. Yeah, well, Marquetta's writing a book, but tell us.
We're working on that right now through all of our programs. I actually just was in New York with Columbia University, and we're doing research around restorative justice and reimagining what the juvenile justice system could look like. Not a juvenile justice system, but reimagining it as a community. And we feel like that if we're doing restorative justice, that community needs to mirror the community that they want to be reintegrated into. So having a space where young people can move around freely, having a space where they have schools, where they have banks, where they have places to do yoga, where they have mental health that doesn't look carceral, but looks like the community that they're going to reintegrate back into. So we're leaning more towards health instead of an incarcerated kind of system for these kids. And then also, how do we get a buy-in from the people that work within the confines of the juvenile justice system? Because they're thinking about losing their jobs. Well, we're letting you know you're not losing a job. Your job is shifting, and it's healthier for you because you're not in a space where you have to criminalize and put on a mask in order to navigate working with these young people. It's a healthier environment for you. It's a healthier environment for the youth that we serve. And we're putting them in a space where when they come back out, that they've already been a part of a healthy community, and it lets them reintegrate into a community in a healthier way. And on that social capital thing, I wanted to say, people know wherever I go, my young people go with me. I don't care what kind, it can be a boot school. They're going to be right by my side, and they know they don't have to speak to where their heart stories, period. Where you come from, what your pain is, what your trauma is, nobody's business. Now, if you choose to tell it, that's because you want to, but you are not required to share your story to anybody. And so you can speak to where you at and you can speak to where you going, but you don't have to let people know where you came from unless you want to. And we arm them with that from the very beginning. So wherever I go, business meetings, events, my young people are right there with me. And I always remind them before we walk in the door, whose house is this? And they'll say, our house. And I'll go, whose house is this? And they'll say, our house, because I want them to know they take up space. Wherever they go, they shrink for no one. And so I remind them that every single day. So our young people have better social capital right now than I do, because they have learned that they can take up space anywhere they go, no matter where they came from.
Awesome. Awesome, Marquetta. Thank you. Yes, we will not be erased. That's what I hear you telling them. That's so important that they know. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you again,
Yeah.
my sisters. I believe
Oh, I'm sorry.
will come on and Doc, did you want to say something? I definitely don't want
No,
to
I was just gonna answer that question real quick by Brother Window. Yeah, so a lot of the work we've been doing with regards to spiritual resilience, fostering spiritual resilience in formerly incarcerated persons, that is published work through the Journal of Pastoral Care and Counseling, and is accessible to receive. There have been multiple other publications through Christian Community Development that we've done with Sacred Neighboring, Disenfranchised Grief, through APA, which is the Association of Psychological Studies and things of that sort. A lot of that work on disenfranchised grief is also published there. And then the Spiritual Resilience Council does have a handbook on reentry advocacy and on that training program. So that is accessible too. And all of that is continuously evolving.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. Anything, Keisha, you wanted to add?
I just real quick, we are also documenting our work. So we are modeling our program after several other programs that are currently in existence around the country that were helped to get started through Impact Justice, which is an organization dedicated to ending mass incarceration through restorative justice practices. So we are being mentored by them for our program. There's tons of documentation on their website. They actually have a really helpful toolkit that you can go through if you're interested in starting a program like this or getting involved in a program like this in your area. Impact Justice has a toolkit that you can use, which is what we are modeling ours after. And then also Seattle has a program named Restorative Community Pathways that we're also modeling. But we as an organization, this will be the first of our kind here in Phoenix, and it will be the first of its kind in a red state. So we are definitely doing the work to document ours, as well as trying to make sure that this is adopted not just by the city or the county level, but statewide in our organization. So we'll be doing, we'll have this information available for in the future on our website as well.
Awesome. Great, great, great. Yes, exciting work. Yes, thank you guys so much. Okay, Chi-Chi, I'm sorry. You mute.
Yes, sorry. Thank you all. That was very informative and inspiring to hear what you all do. That was so encouraging. I was taking so many notes, like, oh my gosh, I want to connect with each of you in one way or the other. It was just so encouraging and inspiring. Thank you all for the work that you do. So thank you again to our facilitator and our amazing speakers. And once again, I just want to remind you that we have a number of learning tours happening as a follow-up to the webinars. You can find more information about our learning tour at the website where you registered. You will also be receiving more information through email. Thank you all for joining us for these webinars. Thank you everyone for joining us for all the webinars and for today's webinar as well. Blessings to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you again. A million thanks to you, ladies. Thank you. Thank you, Chi, Jess,
Thank you,
Kirsten.
everyone.
Thank you. Yes.